This is the Rookie Big Board Rookie Profile Series. I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, here with John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. This is the Josh Downs Rookie Profile. John, Josh Downs is the patron selection this week. That's who the Discord wanted to hear about. And I got to be honest, we waited a little bit here because Josh Downs has been one of the top wide receiver names in the 2023 draft cycle for a long time, but we wanted to see the combine weigh in, John. 5'9", 171. It definitely builds into the context of an electric college career.
I'm going to discuss the size and the weight a little bit later when we get to the scholars model. Josh Downs has been one of the best wide receivers, Matt, over the past 2 years from a college fantasy football perspective. He's been a lot of dynasty radars, but we really have a full kind of profile at this point after the combine. In high school, he was a four-star prospect in the state of Georgia. He was the number 4 player in the country, number 17 wide receiver, and the number 13 player in his home state. As a freshman in high school, he competed in basketball. And as a freshman and sophomore, he participated in track and field. And Matt, he was really good. In Georgia, he finished 3rd in the triple jump and 4th in the long jump. So you have a dual threat athlete with some real skills coming out of high school and going to college. In 2020, as a freshman during COVID, remember that team was loaded at wide receiver with Daz Newsome and De'Ami Brown. He didn't get on the field very much. And there was like, what is he going to do the next year with all those great explosive playmakers gone from the Tar Heels? Matt, he was the best player out of those 3 that I've seen in Chapel Hill. He was first team All-ACC, Biletnikoff Award semifinalist. He ended up recording 101 receptions for 1,335 yards and 8 touchdowns. These are some amazing numbers. He logged 8 or more catches in 11 of 13 games and recorded a streak of scoring touchdowns in 8 straight games. He set a Tar Heel school record for receptions and receiving yards, Matt. It was just an unbelievable season. Last year, the Tar Heels had a big change at quarterback. Sam Howell went to the NFL, and Drake May stepped into the position for the Tar Heels. How was Josh Downs going to do with the change at quarterback? Hey, he was great again, Matt. First team All-ACC, second team All-American, and Biletnikoff Award semifinalist. 94 catches for 1,029 yards and 11 touchdowns. He led the ACC in yards receiving, receptions per game. He had 8.5, and yards receiving per game, 93.5. Matt, from a production standpoint, he was a alpha male. I mean, 8.5 catches, 93 yards per game is amazing. In his career, he had 11 games over 100 yards receiving. Basically, that's 2 seasons. 6 games with double-digit receptions. He's one of 3 players with over 200 career receptions for the Tar Heels, finishing 3rd on the all-time school list. Second receiver in the program history with 2,000-yard receiving campaigns. However, at the combine, Matt, not only did we have to worry about size, but his 40-yard dash, you would expect to be in the low 4.4s, at the worst 4.42. He was a 4.48, a little bit of a red flag for someone who looks dominant on tape. Matt, speaking of tape, what's your breakdown say?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the tape, it's an undeniably exciting prospect, right? You see Josh Downs right off the bat. He is speedy in short space. And so one of the things we talk about all the time is that speed shows up in different ways, right? I think a lot of folks, it's easy to plug in a 40 time and say that's how fast a guy is. But somebody like Josh Downs, he shows speed in short space, he shows quickness, right? So it's more than just the ability to run in a straight line. That being said, John, it's worth pointing out, although for his size, we wanted a lower 4.4, a 4.48 is still a good 40 time overall, right? In the context of wide receivers. And he's a fluid route runner, John. I wouldn't call him a route running technician. In fact, you could see in his route tree, it's a little bit basic, right? He primarily worked a slant and an out route. He does show the ability to work an effective post and a curl route. And John, we're going to get back to his route tree in a little bit when we talk about his placement here, but it's a fine route running. It's not amazing, but he's fluid. The way he works through his routes, I think, is impressive for me. He has reliable hands, and I think that's what's really stood out about Josh Downs the last couple of years. You mentioned he's played under multiple quarterbacks. He's played with multiple folks around him. The ball, he's always been a magnet of targets, right? Because he's consistent, he's reliable, and it's because he's always in space, right? He'll create space in the short field right off the line of scrimmage. So we're talking, 3, 5, 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. I talked about that out route. He can really create consistent space with that out route. The slant route, he can create space with that first step very nicely. But he does accelerate well into the deep field. He can be a downfield threat. Oftentimes, Howell, especially, last year would be looking deep downfield for him and would be a great target for him into the deep field. So Josh Downs can really do a lot. The challenge here for fantasy football purposes, right, is he is going to be limited to a traditional slot role. Now, John, I thought he was going to be limited to a traditional slot role when he was coming in at 5'11", whatever he was listed at in like the 180s, right? So now he's lighter and shorter, and it's really confirming for me that that's pretty much where he's going to live in that traditional slot role here. And so that's the biggest weakness for me. He can be a fine NFL player, right? But there's just going to be a ceiling in a traditional slot role. And I'm emphasizing that because you can have a good slot wide receiver now, right? There's the big slot, but it's going to be hard for him to get 80, 90, 100 targets, which is really what you need to be a consistent wide receiver too, right, for fantasy football. And I don't love his contested catchability. That shouldn't come at any surprise for a guy that's 5'9", 171. He's not really going to go up and win those jump balls. And one thing that we talk about, we have to think about players within the context of scheme. John, this is a scheme that made Daz Newsome look very good. This is a scheme who made Dyami Brown look very good. And both of those guys have had trouble translating to the NFL level. So it's not a one-to-one, but, it does create like this extra little wrinkle of hesitation for this guy who has really good tape and who we've been excited about for a long time. It leaves us with a lot of conflicted feelings. But, John, what I think is not conflicting is the numbers. The numbers are good.
The production is very difficult to argue with on the field. And I have now, he's listed at 5'9", 171. Matt, I had to temper my expectations because of the lack of upside. I don't think he can play an X receiver at all now. I don't think he can play on the Z. He's limited in my book right now, looking at him as a slot receiver. And he might be a really good target magnet in the slot. But what is his upside? Is it Cole Beasley? Cole Beasley had a very nice career up in Buffalo. Very nice magnet at that position. But I don't think he's Tyler Lockett anymore. I think that is now outside the realm of possibilities for Josh Downs because of his limitation at his size. I look at the rest of my model, and if you're looking at the screen right now, the right side, Matt, these numbers are simply unbelievable. 78% catch rate. So there will be some magnetivity, if that's a word, of his hands by the quarterback in the slot. I mean, that's an incredible catch rate. I think he has the highest catch rate in this class. 40% aerial dominator, and everyone knew that they had to stop Josh Downs, and they could not do it this year. Spectacular. And receiving yards per team pass attempt, Matt, 3.5. I was bullish on him when I plugged him into my model. I love the tape throughout the year watching Josh Downs, but I have now tempered my expectations. 202 career receptions. Another small red flag, only 12.3 yards per catch. So he was catching a lot of short routes despite the big home runs that he occasionally had for the Tar Heels. Matt, what your fantasy footballers know?
Yeah, for me, John, he slid outside of the top 50 with his weigh in here at the combine. And you mentioned, relatively disappointing 40 time in athletic testing, right? So I think he's still going to be a day two selection, but more in that 51 to 102 range here. Here's the thing, though, John. I don't think his fantasy football ADP is going to shift. Maybe he was in that late first round discussion in Superflex leagues. But now I still think he's going to go in the early second because, like I mentioned, we have that name recognition. The Josh Down truthers are out there. I think they're going to double down, no pun intended there, on Josh Downs because of that production, like you mentioned. I do still think he could be a low end. That 7-3 is a low end weekly starter for me. So somebody who's living maybe in that, 24 to 36 wide receiver range. And it's going to depend, John, on targets, right? That's going to be the biggest thing for Josh Downs. Is he going to land in an offense where I can project him targets? Because that's really all I'm worried about. I'm not worried about the skill set. I'm not worried about his ability to contribute to an NFL team, but it's going to be about the targets. And John, that's why my fantasy football value comparison is Christian Kirk, because you saw how valuable Christian Kirk was last year when he was in a situation where he got a ton of targets. And in contrast, we've seen Christian Kirk not be very valuable when he was in an offense where he wasn't getting targets, right? So I think with Josh Downs, right, we're really going to have to cling onto the landing spot, but don't worry about the draft capital. Worry about where he actually lands in terms of those targets, that volume, John. That is what we're looking for to get Josh Downs in a position where we can like his value. But John, the rookie big board is already in a position where everybody should be loving the value here. March is a huge month. We have the rookie draft guide coming out, 100+ pages there. The rookie big board is updated with all the combine insight already here. The patron Discord is just completely off the rails. Messages galore here. You're going to want to make sure you get in on it. Head on over to patreon.com/rookie big board. And as always, we appreciate you checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board.